All right, ready to dive into Ask and It Is Given?
Yeah, let's do it.
Looks like you've really been digging into this one.
I have.
Lots of notes, highlighted passages,
It's
even a few life-changing scribbled in the margins.
Yeah, it's definitely been one of those.
Well, let's see if we can uncover some more gems together.
Okay,
Maybe even answer some of those big questions you've got jotted down.
sounds good.
Now, for anyone just tuning in, Ask and It Is Given.
Right?
It's basically like the Bible of the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that whole idea that like attracts like
Yeah.
your thoughts and feelings, shaping your reality.
Definitely a core concept.
And if that rings a bell, you've probably heard of The Secret.
Oh, for sure. Huge influence.
But Ask and It Is Given, it goes deeper, offers like a whole system for applying these principles.
It does.
Now, what's interesting is
Yeah.
this wisdom, it's not coming from some, guru or life coach.
Right.
It's channeled from a group of beings called Abraham.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little out there for some people.
Definitely a bit woo-woo.
But even if you're skeptical, the book's impact is undeniable.
That's for sure.
Mm.
Millions of readers can't be wrong.
Right.
Now, you flagged a lot of key concepts in your notes.
I have.
Things like tuning your frequency
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of becoming a visionary.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what's resonating most strongly with you personally?
Well, honestly, I'm struggling with how to bridge the gap between these universal principles and my own, day-to-day experiences.
Okay, I can see that.
It's one thing to read about attracting abundance,
Yeah,
but it's another to actually experience it when you're dealing with, work stress or relationship drama.
right. It's not always easy to stay in that high vibe state.
Definitely not.
But what's interesting is that you've also paired these concepts with some pretty profound personal reflections in your notes.
Yeah, I've been trying to apply what I'm reading to my own life, see if it actually makes a difference.
Like a real world experiment.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's where the magic happens.
You do.
Oh, yeah. It's when we start to connect the dots between the theory and our own unique experiences.
That makes sense.
Now, you've highlighted the customer service anecdote,
I did.
and it really stood out to me, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a mini experiment in the law of attraction.
It is.
You tried calling with both an impatient and a grateful attitude.
Right, and both times the agent totally mirrored my energy.
Exactly. If you were radiating frustration, you got a frustrated response.
Yeah.
But when you shifted to gratitude, the interaction totally changed.
It was wild.
Now, it made me wonder,
Uh-oh.
how often am I unconsciously tuning my interactions with others based on my own mood?
Oh, interesting question.
Like if I'm walking around feeling stressed and overwhelmed,
Yeah.
am I really attracting the most helpful or supportive responses from the people around me?
I never thought of it that way.
And what about when we're talking about attracting bigger things like love or abundance? If we're not a vibrational match for those things.
It's like we're putting out a signal that's all static.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No wonder we're not getting the clear reception we're hoping for.
Okay. That's a great analogy.
So it seems like this whole tuning our frequency thing
Mhm.
is not just some abstract concept.
It's really about becoming aware of our internal state.
Yes. And how that might be shaping our external reality.
Now, that raises another question for me, though.
Okay, what is it?
Is it always our responsibility to maintain that high vibration, even when we're dealing with difficult people or situations?
That's a tough one.
Where's the line between personal responsibility and accepting that sometimes, life just throws us curveballs?
Right. Like you can't always control what other people do or say.
Exactly.
But I think the book does grapple with that tension.
It does.
Yeah, it's not about becoming some Pollyanna who denies the existence of negativity.
Right.
It's more about becoming aware of our power to choose our response,
Okay.
to shift our perspective.
So even in a challenging situation, we can still choose how we want to react to it.
Exactly. It's like, remember that analogy of the emotional fuel gauge?
Oh, yeah, the fuel gauge.
One of the most memorable parts of the book for me.
Definitely.
If negative emotions are like running low on fuel, then positive emotions are like filling up the tank.
And they're pretty clear that we should never criticize our fuel gauge,
Right.
meaning don't beat yourself up for feeling down or frustrated.
Exactly. It's all part of the human experience.
Right.
But I think where it gets really practical,
Yeah.
and where I see you really grappling with this in your notes,
Uh-oh.
is that refueling process.
Okay.
It's not about slapping on a fake smile.
Right.
It's about identifying your personal gas stations.
You're what?
Your gas stations.
Yeah.
Those activities, people, places that genuinely replenish your energy.
Okay, got it.
Like for some people, it might be spending time in nature.
Yeah.
For others, it might be listening to music.
Or maybe even just taking a long bath.
Exactly. It's different for everyone. And I think that's where the real work begins.
The work.
Yeah, it's about figuring out what truly fills your tank.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Definitely not
That
there.
makes it more challenging, but also more exciting.
Absolutely. It's like the book provides the map,
Mm-hmm.
but you're the one who has to chart your own course through that emotional landscape.
And that can be pretty daunting,
It can be.
especially when you're not even sure where you're headed.
Right. It's like, what's the point of filling up the tank if you don't know where you're going?
That's exactly what I've been struggling with.
And that's where I think the book's emphasis on becoming a visionary comes in.
As visionary.
Yeah, that idea of taking ownership of your experience rather than being a passive observer.
Okay.
It ties into the psychological idea of locus of control, right? Whether we feel like we're in the driver's seat or just along for the ride.
And ask and it is given is all about empowering us to grab the wheel.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have the power to create our own reality.
That's a powerful concept.
Now, I know you've circled a quote that says, "You are the only one who creates your reality."
I did.
But you've also added a question mark next to it.
Well, it's a bold statement. It can be hard to reconcile with those times when life feels completely out of our control.
I get it. Like, what about those unexpected challenges? The things we could never have predicted or manifested.
Exactly. Those curveballs life throws at us.
And that's where I think the concept of allowing comes into play.
Allow.
It's not just about dictating every detail of our lives,
Right.
but about trusting that there's a bigger picture unfolding.
Even when we can't see it.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how those two ideas might work together.
That's like a dance, right?
Dance.
Yeah, between intention and surrender.
Okay, I like that.
We set our intentions, we visualize what we want, but we also allow space for the universe to work its magic.
So we're not trying to micromanage every step.
Exactly. It's a collaboration.
That makes me feel a bit more at ease, honestly.
I think that's the key, finding that balance.
Yeah.
Now, you've also highlighted the section on the 22 processes for staying connected.
Yeah, those really intrigued me.
Do you see those processes as tools for influencing that co-creation or something else entirely?
That's a great question.
I think it's worth diving into a few of those processes specifically
Okay,
to see how they resonate with your personal experience.
sounds good.
You've highlighted segment intending and scripting.
I
Why
did.
don't we start there?
All right, let's unpack those. Okay, so segment intending.
Yeah.
At first glance, it
Yeah.
might seem like,
Yeah.
just another time management technique.
Right, like breaking your day into chunks,
Exactly.
setting goals for each one,
But I think there's something more to it.
especially in the context of ask and it's given.
Right. It's not just about being productive.
It's almost like with each intention,
Yeah.
we're planting a seed.
A seed of creation.
And you mentioned in your notes
I did.
that you felt most powerful when you were actively using segment intending.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
What was it like for you?
Well, it felt like I was consciously, scripting the narrative of my day.
Interesting.
It wasn't just about checking things off a list. It was about infusing each moment with intention.
With that energy we've been talking about.
Exactly.
So instead of just rushing through your morning routine,
Right.
you might set an intention to feel calm and grounded.
And it worked.
I actually noticed a shift.
Wow.
My energy felt different,
Interesting.
and the whole day seemed to flow more smoothly.
But what happens when
Yeah.
life throws those inevitable curveballs?
It's a great question.
Like you set an intention for a peaceful commute, and then you get stuck in traffic.
Right?
Does that mean you failed at segment intending?
That's what I was wrestling with.
Because if it's all about maintaining that high vibration,
Yeah.
what happens when those low vibe situations just pop up?
Right. Do we just ignore them?
I think that's where allowing comes in again.
Okay.
It's recognizing
Right.
we can't control every external circumstance.
But we can control our response.
Exactly.
So instead of getting frustrated in traffic, I could shift my intention.
So finding peace in the chaos.
Or maybe
Yeah.
my intention becomes about practicing patience,
Or finding a creative solution.
like listening to a new podcast.
There you go.
So segment intending
Mhm.
becomes more of a tool for navigating.
rather than dictating.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's move on to scripting.
Okay, scripting.
That one always feels a bit more...
Magical.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like you're writing out your ideal scenario
Uh-huh.
in vivid detail,
Almost like a movie script.
and it can be intimidating.
Especially if there's a big gap between your current reality.
And that dream you're trying to script.
Ask and evacuations. It is given really emphasizes the power of imagination.
It does.
But is it really enough to just write it down?
What about action? Right, like how do those two things work together?
Well, the book does say that action is important,
It does.
but it frames it as a joyful response to inspiration.
Not a desperate attempt to force things to happen.
Exactly.
So it's not about creating a rigid plan.
And then stressing out when things don't go according to schedule.
It's more about getting clear on what you want,
Feeling the emotions of having it already.
and then trusting that the how will show up
It's that dance again.
between intention and surrender,
We're setting the stage with our script
but leaving room for improvisation.
for the universe to sprinkle in some magic.
I like that.
So it's not about controlling every detail
It's about aligning our energy.
and then allowing the universe to do its thing.
Now, you did bring up doubt in your notes.
I did.
What if you're scripting this amazing life, but deep down you don't really believe it's possible?
Does that sabotage everything?
The big question.
Doubt is a natural part of the human experience.
Especially when we're trying to manifest something big.
Something outside our comfort zone.
But ask and interest. It is given.
Yeah,
It doesn't say to eliminate doubt completely.
it doesn't.
It encourages us to treat doubt as a separate entity
Like a mischievous friend.
who keeps popping up with limiting beliefs.
So we acknowledge it.
We don't let it take over.
We choose to focus on the desired outcome.
Even when doubt is whispering in our ear.
It's like acknowledging both vibrations exist.
The doubt and the desire.
And choosing which one we want to amplify.
And that's where our power lies.
In the choosing.
But how do we do that?
How do we shift our energy when doubt feels really strong?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, the book has a few suggestions.
Like what?
Using affirmations.
Affirmations, okay.
But not just as empty phrases.
But as reminders of what we want to create.
So instead of just saying, I am abundant,
Mm-hmm.
it's about feeling the truth of that statement.
Even if you don't see the evidence yet.
We're using affirmations to shift our internal vibration.
Which can then start to influence our external circumstances.
That's the idea.
Now, you also highlighted a passage about feeling good now.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Don't wait for the manifestation to happen.
To allow yourself to feel joy and gratitude.
Right, because if we're always delaying our happiness,
Thinking, I'll be happy,
then we're telling the universe we don't deserve to feel good now.
and we'll keep attracting more of that.
More of not feeling good enough.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But when we choose to feel good now,
Regardless of our external circumstances,
we're aligning with that vibration of joy and abundance.
we're sending a message to the universe.
I am worthy.
And that's where appreciation comes in.
Appreciation, yeah.
It's like a shortcut to raising our vibration.
Remember that research we talked about?
About happy marriages,
And the 5-to-1 ratio.
of positive to negative interactions,
It shows how appreciation can shift the dynamic,
of any relationship.
even the one with ourselves. Okay, so we've covered segment intending
Good step.
and the importance of feeling good now
Are there any other processes
from those 22.
that stand out to you?
Well, you flagged Abraham's guidance.
I did.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that one.
Okay, well,
It's the one that always sparks the most questions for me
really, why is that?
because it involves trusting our intuition,
That inner voice.
which can be so quiet sometimes,
Hard to hear.
especially in a world that tells us to ignore it.
To follow the rules,
The logic.
the external guidance.
You circled a quote in the book
I did.
that says, "The basis of your life is freedom. The purpose of your life is joy."
That's one of my favorites.
And I think it speaks to the essence of trusting our intuition,
Because it's about choosing what feels aligned.
even if it doesn't make sense to everyone
It
else.
takes courage.
Step outside those expectations.
And trust that inner compass.
But you also mentioned in your notes
I did.
that you sometimes feel lost,
Oh, yeah.
like you're not sure which direction to go,
If we're all visionaries,
as the book suggests.
shouldn't we always have a clear vision?
That's the question, isn't it?
Maybe it's okay to not know the exact destination
To trust that the path will reveal itself.
as we go.
But how do we know if we're on the right path?
Ask, and it is given says our emotions are our guideposts.
Okay.
Remember the emotional guidance scale?
Oh yeah, the scale.
It's about learning to listen to those subtle cues,
Those feelings of expansion and contraction.
to see if we're moving towards what feels good.
Or away from it.
Exactly.
So it's not just about setting goals.
And striving to achieve them.
It's about paying attention to how we feel along the way.
And allowing ourselves to course correct.
If something feels off,
That's a radical act of self-love.
to honor our own guidance.
Even if it means deviating from the plan,
Okay, it's not about being perfect,
it's about being present.
responsive to our own needs and desires.
And you know, there's one more thing I've been thinking about.
What's that?
You underline this in the book.
Which one?
The universe adores you, for it knows your broadest intentions.
Oh, wow.
What does that mean to you?
It's beautiful.
It is.
And I think it speaks to the idea that we are inherently worthy.
That we are loved and supported,
That's something greater than ourselves.
even when we doubt it.
But what about when
Yeah.
we make mistakes?
When we don't act in alignment with our highest good.
Does the universe still adore us then?
That's a great question.
And I think it touches on forgiveness.
Forgiveness of ourselves and others.
Okay, let's explore that a bit deeper.
Right.
Because if we're all on this journey of becoming conscious creators,
Mm-hmm.
how do we deal with those inevitable moments of imperfection? Forgiveness, yeah, it feels like it's key to this whole ask and it is given thing.
It makes sense.
If we're always beating ourselves up
Mm-hmm.
for past mistakes
Or holding on to resentment.
towards others,
Yeah. How can we align with that love and abundance?
it's like carrying around all that negativity.
Like a heavy backpack.
Weighs us down, keeps us stuck.
In those lower vibrations.
You mentioned feeling a sense of blockage in your notes.
I
wonder if some of that is tied to unresolved stuff.
Maybe.
Hurts, grudges.
It's possible?
Now, ask
Yeah.
and it's given. Talks about forgiveness.
As a way to release all that?
But it's always easier said than done.
It is.
How do you actually forgive someone who's hurt you?
Or even forgive yourself for making those choices you regret.
It's a process.
Right? It is, not a one-time event.
And the book emphasizes that forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's not about condoning the action.
Right.
It's about freeing yourself from the burden.
From that emotional weight.
So it's not about saying what happened was okay.
It's about letting go of the anger and resentment.
That keeps you stuck in the past.
Exactly.
In your notes, you actually wrote,
I did.
forgiveness feels like freedom
It does.
when you release that anger.
It's like this weight lifts.
And then you can move forward.
Create a new reality.
That's not tied to those past hurts.
That's the connection to ask, and it is given.
Right.
If we want a life full of joy,
Love, abundance,
you got to clear out the space.
forgiveness is how we do that.
It's so powerful.
But what about forgiving ourselves?
That's the tough one.
I think it could be even harder.
Why is that?
Letting go of the guilt and shame.
After we make a mistake.
Well, ask and it is given, says
Forgiveness.
self-forgiveness starts with remembering.
Okay.
We're all human
We have
on a journey,
of learning and growth.
and mistakes, they're going to happen.
So instead of judging ourselves so harshly,
Can we see those mistakes as opportunities?
opportunities for growth.
The book even talks about self-compassion,
Oh, yeah.
treating ourselves with kindness.
The same kindness we'd offer a loved one.
It was messed up.
Because when we're constantly beating ourselves up
We're blocking ourselves from receiving.
from all the good stuff,
We're putting up a barrier
but when we practice forgiveness,
of ourselves and others
we dismantle that barrier.
and let the good stuff flow in. You know, as we've been talking
Mhm.
about all these concepts,
The law of attraction.
tuning our
In
frequency,
22 process.
forgiveness
I keep coming back to that core message.
of ask and it is given.
It's so simple.
Deceptively simple
It implies we have this power,
to shape our reality
but it takes trust.
and surrender.
It's not about forcing things to happen.
On our timeline,
We get clear on what we want
align our energy
and then trust.
that the universe has got us.
That's what makes this book so profound.
It's not just self-help.
It's a spiritual invitation
To step into our power,
as creators
to co-create with the universe
to trust in the unfold.
of something bigger than we can imagine,
It's about surrendering to the mystery
while still actively participating.
in the creation process
And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm left with a sense of awe.
and possibility
We've only scratched the surface
of what's possible.
when we tap into that power within.
So as you continue your exploration,
Of ask and plenty, it is given.
stay curious
Keep those notes flowing.
and trust that the answers you seek.
Are already within you.
And remember, the universe is always listening.
Always conspiring to support you.
All you have to do is ask.